Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. My name is Rahim Rahimtullah. I'm joined today by Arend Jan Boekestijn, a lecturer in international relations at the University of Utrecht. Mr. Boekestijn, many thanks for joining us.
Okay.
You're here as part of a delegation, as I understand, from the Netherlands. Tell us your impressions so far of your trip here to Ukraine. This is your first time, I believe.
Yes. We had a very busy schedule, and it was not only a Dutch delegation, there was also people from Spain and Portugal and France and Germany and Italy. We were invited by mail by an Institute of World Policy here in Kiev, and they said that I was a European thought leader. I didn't know that, but now I'm a European thought leader.
Very flattering.
Very flattering. And it was a fantastic program. We even had a visit with the Prime Minister, so it's interesting.
It's interesting. And this is coming, of course, at a rather crucial time in Dutch-Ukrainian relations, we might say, because we have, of course, a referendum coming up in the Netherlands on on the ratification of Ukraine's association agreement with the European Union. Tell us a little bit about attitudes in in the Netherlands to this agreement.
It's a weird and a long story. We had a new parliamentary law which enabled us to have consultative referendum, which means it's not binding. Now, if you can collect 300,000 signatures, then you can organize a referendum. So some people did this, and they got enough signatures, and now we have this referendum. But the trouble is, first of all, it's not binding. So people are angry about that. And secondly, the parliament itself said, okay, when we have the results, I think we should listen to the people. So the parliament made itself binding. Now, the Prime Minister hasn't said what he will do if the outcome is negative.
Yes.
But if you know Brussels well, just imagine that the outcome will be negative, which is possible because now in the polls, I think 55% is against the association treaty. Now, if that were to happen, our Prime Minister has to go to Brussels, but it takes a vote based on unanimity to change the treaty. So it's a very unclear situation. It's not what will happen. And I think the outcome will be that it will be very difficult to change the treaty. And then, of course, the people who are against it will be even more angry.
It all sounds rather difficult. I think some European officials, top European officials, have said that if the Dutch vote against the treaty, it would be something of a disaster. I think those were the words. It seems like it's sort of shaping up to be a kind of test between Brussels and your own politics in the Netherlands.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is playing into what we might say were wider sentiments in Dutch society. Absolutely.
Because if the outcome will be negative and there will be no change in the treaty, it will, of course, embolden populism in the Netherlands. And we already have a substantial amount of populism in Dutch politics, just like in France and in Italy and even in Germany today, even in England.
Absolutely. It's a growing trend, I think, across Europe. Ukraine potentially stands to become what we could say a victim here of this rise in populism across Europe. But how much do you think in the Netherlands this is really about Ukraine as such? What do people know about Ukraine?
People don't know anything about Ukraine. They can't even find it on a map, I'm afraid. But what's happening is that there is a large anti-European spirit in my society. So they took this topic, but in reality they were targeting Brussels itself. So it's an anti-European mood. Everything which destroys the European Union is fine for them. It's a sad situation.
And you can see, though, can't you, on the one side, if you're in Western Europe, how Ukraine appears to them, because what we have here is still a war going on in the eastern parts of the country. The economy is perhaps just coming out of recession, but is still in a bad way. I mean, Ukraine would, of course, need if it were, for example, a member of the European Union, it would be a better factor. It would receive funds much more than it would give to the rest of the Union. So there is grounds, I think, for understanding why, for example, Dutch or French or Italians might say, actually, we don't want anything to do with Ukraine right now. Let them get their own house in order first, and then maybe later they could join closer to the European Union. Do you think those sorts of arguments are valid?
Yes. Many people argue that both the European Union and NATO made a big mistake in the past because they were flirting with Ukrainian membership of both EU and NATO. Merkel has curbed that, but there were mentions. Now, people in the Netherlands think that this policy has been detrimental to the Ukraine itself because it also invited Putin to grab Crimea. So they would have preferred a more distant way of dealing with these things. And in a way, it's true. I mean, if you think about it, NATO membership of the Ukraine only makes sense if people in the Western world are willing to die for Kiev. That's the basic argument. And that's not going to happen. So if you then flirt with membership, it's also hypocritical in a sense. So would it be much nicer to not to flirt about it, but to help Ukraine in a bilateral or in a multilateral way?
Do you think, I think many Dutch would probably actually support what is going on in this country. I mean, what they're fighting for here is democracy, rule of law, European values. Yeah. On the face of it, you think things that Dutch, French, Italians, British would very much support. Do you think then, are you going to have to go back to the Netherlands now and actually try to fill in for them what is really going on here? Because, I mean, as far as I understand, you actually would like the referendum to fail. You would like the Dutch to support Ukraine.
Yes. And also, listen, I have to explain the position of segments of Dutch society. There is a growing segment in Dutch society who is, funny enough, pro-Putin. There's a populist strand of argument which is actually pro-Putin, because Putin is also against the European Union, and they like an authoritarian way of operating. That's part of it. There are also people who think that the present Ukrainian government will never become democratic. And that's a very sad argument. And I think that's very powerful in the Netherlands. We're not going to support this government. And that will play a big role also during the referendum. They think that all the money we'll put in it will go into the coffers of bad people. Huh?
Absolutely. What can we do then to sort of change those attitudes? I mean, of course, I'm sure in Holland they saw all the pictures from 2 years ago from the Maidan, the revolution they had here. But, I mean, 2 years later, people aren't necessarily going to remember that. And also the propaganda war which has come about those events has, I'm sure, blurred the picture quite strongly. So what needs to be done, do you think, to get the real message across to the Dutch?
I think there are two compelling arguments. First of all, part of the Ukrainian society wants to have the rule of law. They know that the present-day situation is stifling economic growth, and that therefore they will never find a job when it stays like this. Now, I think that we have to support these people, because I believe in the rule of law myself. These are European values, so if you believe in it, you have to try to promote the rule of law in a country which is really struggling with it. But the second argument is perhaps even more compelling. If Ukraine were to succeed in about 20, 30, 40, 50 years in really altering this oligarchic structure and so, then it would become a booming place. It has everything. It has IT, it has military industry. And if it really would become a vibrant democracy, it would also embolden the opposition against Putin. because that is, I think, Putin's biggest fear.
In Russia.
In Russia.
Yes.
Putin's biggest fear is that the Ukraine becomes a success, because then there are many people in Russia too who would like to have the rule of law in Russia itself. So there's a big geopolitical game to be made here. And thirdly, of course, power needs countervailing power. Yeah? And we see now in the East what Putin has done, and there is not much power to counter Putin's power, and that's worrying me.
We're almost out of time, unfortunately. So, given that, then, just as a final thought, is it about the referendum in the Netherlands? Should we be putting that in geopolitical terms? Should you tell the Dutch people, look, this isn't actually just about Ukraine. This is about Europe. This is about our future. This is about the next frontier of the European project, and about securing the continent against practices like those that we see in Russia. Do you think ultimately that sort of spin, if I could say, is that's putting that kind of view on this referendum, is that what is going to get through to the Dutch people?
I would hope so. I will try to do it. But to be perfectly honest, the European Union itself is in a big crisis. We will see a shrinking Eurozone. I think the Greeks are going to leave. We will see a mini Schengen area. I'm afraid that the Greeks are also kicked out of Schengen. So we are arguing all these arguments in a setting which is really volatile, and Europe is in crisis. So to some extent, I think we also had imperial overstretch in the European Union. I think we have to become smaller and build more solid and then expand. Yeah.
And so I think, I mean, for Ukraine, it's a very difficult picture. We'll have to wait and see for the referendum in April which way the Dutch will go. Unfortunately, that's where we'll have to leave it today. But many thanks for coming to join us.
You're welcome.
You've been watching Viewpoint. I've been joined by Arend Jan Boekestijn, a lecturer in international relations at Utrecht University. We've been discussing the referendum which is coming up in the Netherlands on the ratification of Ukraine's association agreement with the European Union. That's all we have time for. Do join us again, and many thanks for watching.